The rain had already turned the front steps into a mirror of broken lights when Lena Carter stepped outside with her newborn twins pressed against her chest. She wasn't wearing a coat. She wasn't wearing shoes. She was still weak from childbirth, still trembling, still learning how to hold two tiny lives at once without breaking apart herself. And yet there she stood, soaked, shaking, speechless, while the man who had promised to protect her placed a baby car seat on the wet ground, lifted his duffel bag, and looked at her like she was someone he no longer recognized. The twins were crying. The sky was roaring, and Lena could not understand how, in less than 10 minutes, her whole life had turned from a home into a sidewalk. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice barely surviving the storm. "Please, the babies." But Marcus did not move. He just stood there in the rain, jaw tight, shoulders stiff, as if kindness itself had become too expensive. Inside the house, the lights were still on. The windows were warm. The nursery lamp was glowing upstairs. Everything that belonged to her was still inside. Everything except mercy. What Marcus did not know, what nobody in that storm knew, was that by morning, one phone call would reveal a truth powerful enough to turn shame into silence, abandonment into regret, and a broken woman into the one person who legally owned everything he thought he could take from her. But before sunrise, Lena would have to survive the longest night of her life. And the reason Marcus left her in the rain with those babies was not the reason he would tell the world. Because some stories don't begin with betrayal. Some stories begin with fear pretending to be strength. And by the time Marcus Carter understood who Lena truly was and what he had really thrown away, it was already too late. 16 months earlier, nobody who knew Marcus and Lena would have guessed their story would end like this. They were the kind of couple people smiled at in grocery stores, not because they were loud, not because they performed happiness, but because there was something gentle between them. Marcus was a delivery supervisor with careful habits and tired eyes. He checked the locks twice before bed, folded receipts into neat squares, and believed that if he worked hard enough, life might stop asking him for more. Lena was the opposite in all the ways that made them fit. She laughed easily. She cried at kindness. She remembered people's birthdays, favorite tea, children's names, and stories they had only told once. She worked part-time at a community literacy center, where struggling kids somehow tried harder whenever she sat beside them. Marcus used to say Lena made every room feel less lonely. And for a while, that was enough. Their apartment wasn't luxurious, but it was warm, clean, and full of small dreams. A second-hand couch, mugs that didn't match, notes on the fridge, a bedroom drawer where Lena kept baby names long before there was ever a baby. Marcus wanted security. Lena wanted family. And together, they kept promising each other that one day they would have both. The first crack didn't come from lack of love. It came from pressure. Marcus's company cut hours. Gas prices rose. Rent went up. Then his mother, Darlene Carter, started visiting more often. Darlene was not the kind of woman who needed to raise her voice to control a room. She had mastered something sharper, the sentence soft enough to sound concerned and pointed enough to bruise. She never said she disliked Lena. She just asked questions that carried poison inside them. "Does she understand how hard you work, Marcus? Are you sure she's ready for real responsibility?" Some women like the idea of struggle, but not the reality. At first, Marcus brushed it off. But worry has a dangerous habit. It borrows the voice of the people we trust most. And when money got tighter, Darlene's words began to sound less like interference and more like warning. Then came the pregnancy. Actually, pregnancies. Lena was 10 weeks along when the nurse smiled at the screen and said, "You might want to sit down. I'm seeing two." For one beautiful, breathless second, the room held nothing but shock and laughter. Two babies, two heartbeats, two tiny futures rushing toward them all at once. Lena cried first. Marcus laughed, then cried after her. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "We're going to be okay." And Lena believed him. For the next few weeks, she spoke to the babies every morning, read aloud from old children's books, and kept placing Marcus's hand on her stomach, telling him, "They already know your voice." He smiled when she said it, but beneath that smile, fear had already started building foundations. Two babies meant two cribs, two car seats, twice the formula, twice the doctor visits, twice the diapers, twice the responsibility. And Marcus, already holding together a life built on late payments and quiet panic, began to feel like fatherhood wasn't arriving as a blessing. It was arriving as an audit. Still, Lena kept trying to meet him with grace. When he came home late, she warmed his dinner. When he got quiet, she did not accuse him. When he stared too long at the bills, she reached for his hand and said, "We don't need perfect. We just need each other." But not every man knows how to receive love when he feels ashamed. Some men hear tenderness and only feel the weight of failing to deserve it. And Marcus was slowly becoming one of them. There was one more thing Lena rarely talked about: her family. Her father had died when she was young. Her mother passed away while Lena was in college. The only relative she had ever felt truly close to was her grandmother, Eleanor Price, a woman with elegant handwriting, quiet discipline, and a habit of sending letters instead of texts. But in recent years, Lena and Eleanor had drifted apart. Not through anger, through distance, life. Eleanor had moved into assisted living in another state. Calls became shorter. Visits became fewer. Promises to come next month stretched into missed seasons. When Eleanor's health began failing, a law office tried more than once to contact Lena, but the number on file was old. The emails landed in spam, and the certified letters arrived during the weeks when Marcus had started sorting the mail himself, stacking what looked urgent and shoving what looked unnecessary into a drawer neither of them opened. By the time the twins were due, one truth had already been moving silently toward their front door. But nobody inside that apartment knew it yet. Pregnancy changed Lena's body the way storms change coastlines. Slowly at first, then all at once. She was exhausted more often. Her ankles swelled. Her back hurt. Simple things took longer, but she never stopped trying to make the apartment feel hopeful. She hung moon and star decorations above the cribs, folded baby clothes by size, and made lists for feedings, emergency numbers, and names she loved. Marcus, meanwhile, started coming home with a different expression. Not anger. Something flatter than that. A look like he was always having a conversation with disaster, and disaster was winning. He picked up extra shifts, took side jobs, stopped buying coffee, stopped laughing as much, stopped dreaming aloud. The future no longer sounded like a place to reach together. It sounded like a test he was already failing. One evening, Lena found him standing in the nursery doorway, staring at the two assembled cribs. "You okay?" she asked. Marcus nodded too fast. "Yeah." But he didn't move. Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. "We'll figure it out," she said. Marcus let out a tired breath. What if figuring it out isn't enough? Lena looked up. "Since when?" "Since everything costs more than we have. Since every plan feels smaller than the problem. Since I'm supposed to protect all of you, and I can barely keep up with rent." She reached for his hand. "You don't have to do it alone." That should have comforted him. Instead, something in his face closed. Because Marcus didn't hear partnership. He heard proof. Proof that she could see the cracks now. Proof that his fear was visible. Proof that he was no longer the strong one. And for some people, being seen in weakness feels more unbearable than being alone in it. A week later, Darlene came over with casseroles, folded blankets, and opinions no one asked for. She looked through the apartment with the authority of someone reviewing a disappointing investment. Then, in the kitchen, she lowered her voice and said to Marcus, though not low enough, "Love is beautiful until the bills arrive." Lena pretended not to hear. Darlene continued, "Twins are not a dream, Marcus. They're a financial reality. You need to start thinking like a father, not like a man trying to be liked." Marcus stared at the sink. "She's doing her best," he said quietly. Darlene gave him that look, half pity, half correction. Doing her best and being enough are not always the same thing. Lena stood in the hallway, hand on her belly, and closed her eyes. She could have confronted her, could have raised her voice, could have finally said what she had been swallowing for months. But she didn't. Because peace was expensive too. And she was already paying for too much. The twins came early. 36 weeks. A hard labor, a blur of pain, bright lights, clipped instructions, nurses moving fast. Marcus was there when the first baby cried. Then the second. 2 boys. Tiny, beautiful, furious at the coldness of the world. Lena held them with tears streaming down her face. Marcus kissed both their heads and whispered promises into the space above them. For 2 days, the hospital felt like a reset. Like maybe fear had lost. Like maybe love had finally become heavier than pressure. But while Lena was learning the rhythm of feeding twins, Marcus was learning how quickly joy could be interrupted by numbers. The insurance issue came first, then reduced work hours, then a message from the landlord about late rent, then Darlene's call. "You need to face facts," she told him. "Love won't keep a roof over those babies." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying sometimes a man has to make painful decisions before life makes them for him." Marcus did not answer, but her words stayed. And fear, once invited, is rarely content to sit quietly. By the time Lena and the babies came home, the apartment felt changed. Not physically, emotionally. Like everyone was speaking, but something truer was being buried beneath every sentence. Lena felt it. She just didn't know how close it had come. It happened 11 days after the twins were born. The weather had warned everyone since morning. Heavy storm advisory, flooding possible, winds after dark. Lena spent the day moving slowly through the apartment, feeding one baby while the other slept, then switching. She was tired in the way only new mothers understand. A deep, bone-level exhaustion wrapped around a love too fierce to rest. The boys had finally fallen asleep just after 8. Rain struck the windows in sheets. The nursery lamp cast a small gold circle across the wall. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, with a bottle in one hand and her phone in the other, trying to answer a text from Denise, the nurse who had checked on her earlier that day. Then Marcus came home. He looked wrong immediately. His jacket was soaked, yes, but it was more than that. He came in carrying a duffel bag he hadn't taken to work in months. He didn't greet her, didn't ask about the babies, didn't bend toward the bassinets like he usually did. He just stood by the door like someone arriving to end something. "Marcus?" He set the bag down. "We need to talk." There are sentences that announce themselves like weather. The room changes before the words finish landing. Lena slowly rose. "What happened?" Marcus ran both hands over his face. "I can't do this." At first, she thought he meant work, bills, his mother, stress, anything but the truth walking toward her. "What do you mean, you can't do this?" He looked around the apartment as if searching for a version of himself he had already outgrown. "This life, this pressure, these bills, the babies, Lena. Everything is happening too fast." Her voice broke at the edges. "They're your sons." "I know that." "Then why are you saying it like they're a burden?" He flinched, but only for a second. "You don't understand what's on me." Lena stared at him in disbelief. "I was in labor for 14 hours. I haven't slept. I'm still healing. I'm feeding 2 newborns every 2 hours. Don't tell me I don't understand pressure." He turned away. And that, more than anything, terrified her. Because men who still feel connected to you stay in the pain of your voice. Men who have already left begin rehearsing distance before their feet move. Then the words came. Flat, controlled, colder than shouting. My mother was right. Lena felt something inside her go very still. Marcus continued. "This isn't sustainable. We can't afford this place. We can't afford 2 babies. I can't keep drowning because neither of us wants to admit reality." For a moment, Lena could not speak. Then she whispered, "Reality?" He finally looked at her. "Reality is that I need space." "With newborn twins?" He swallowed hard. "Just for now." No sentence in the history of broken homes has ever meant what it pretends to mean. Lena stepped back as if physically struck. "Marcus, look at me. Look at me and tell me you're leaving your wife and your 11-day-old babies in the middle of a storm because you need space." He said nothing. The silence answered. One of the babies started crying, then the other. Lena lifted them both against her chest. "Please," she said, voice shaking now. "If you're overwhelmed, fine, sit down. We'll call someone. We'll ask for help. But do not do this. Not tonight. Not like this." For one fragile second, it looked like he might break. Then his phone lit up. Darlene. He declined the call. And whatever doubt had still been alive in him seemed to harden into decision. "The landlord is coming tomorrow," he said. "We're behind. I've made arrangements." "What arrangements?" He hesitated, then said the cruelest thing softly. "You and the babies need to go stay somewhere else for a while." Lena blinked at him as if language itself had failed. "This is our home." "No," Marcus said too quickly. "It's the apartment I've been paying for." The room went silent except for the storm and the babies. Lena's face changed, not into rage, into heartbreak too deep for anger, because this was no longer fear talking. This was humiliation. This was the man she loved taking the life they built together and rewriting it as if she had only ever been allowed in it by permission. "After everything," she whispered, "this is who you become?" Marcus looked like he hated the answer, but he didn't change it. Lena grabbed 2 blankets. One baby cried against her shoulder. The other rooted blindly for comfort. "Where am I supposed to go?" Marcus picked up one of the car seats and set it by the door. The gesture was meant to look practical. It looked like surrender. "I'll call for a rideshare," he said. She stared at him. "In this weather? With newborns?" He had no good answer. So he gave her the worst one. "I don't know what else to do." When someone says that after choosing harm, what they really mean is, "I found something easier for me." Lena walked toward the door because shock sometimes makes movement easier than thought. She reached the threshold, the babies crying louder now, their tiny faces red with discomfort. She looked back once. At the couch where they had picked names. At the hallway where Marcus used to meet her after work. At the nursery upstairs. At the man standing in the center of all of it. Too afraid to be cruel, honestly. Too weak to be kind, bravely. Then she stepped into the rain. The cold hit instantly. The kind that bites through skin and straight into fear. Lena sat on the front step because her body was still not fully her own. She held both babies tighter, trying to shield their faces, murmuring through tears, "It's okay. It's okay. Mommy's here. Mommy's here." Behind her, the door opened once more. She turned with a breath of hope. Marcus came out carrying the duffel bag. Not for her. For himself. He placed the second baby seat beside the first and stood there under the stormlight, trapped between guilt and cowardice. "Marcus," she pleaded one last time. "Please, don't let this be the story they grow up hearing about their father." If he cried, the rain hid it. If he regretted it, regret was still not stronger than pride. Then a porch light from across the street clicked on. A curtain shifted. Someone had seen. And for the first time that night, shame entered the scene. Marcus stepped back. Lena looked away. Because some wounds cut deeper the moment they become visible. Across the street, Mrs. Evelyn Brooks had been awake with insomnia and peppermint tea when she saw the shape on the steps. At first, she thought it was trash blown into a corner by the wind. Then she saw movement. A woman. Babies. Rain. And a man standing far enough away to tell a terrible story without saying a word. Mrs. Brooks was 68, sharp-eyed, and unimpressed by cowardice in any generation. She was outside with an umbrella in less than 30 seconds. "What on earth is going on here?" Lena tried to stand, but weakness folded through her. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Mrs. Brooks knelt without waiting for an explanation. "Don't apologize. Give me the diaper bag." Marcus took one step forward. "I was handling it." Mrs. Brooks turned her full stare on him. "No, son, you were witnessing it." He said nothing. That was answer enough. Together, Mrs. Brooks and Lena moved toward the older woman's duplex across the street. She tucked the umbrella low over the babies, then over Lena, protecting the smallest and the most broken all at once. Inside, Everything smelled like cinnamon and clean laundry. Lena sat wrapped in quilts while Mrs. Brooks brought towels, warm water, dry socks, and the kind of calm only older women who have survived enough grief can offer. "Babies first," she said gently. They changed the boys into dry sleepers. One twin quieted as soon as warmth reached his skin. The other kept crying until Lena laid him against her heartbeat. Mrs. Brooks returned with soup, though Lena was too shaken to eat. "Listen to me," the older woman said, crouching in front of her. "Tonight is not the end of your story. Tonight is just proof of who deserves no place in the next chapter." At that, Lena finally cried the way she had been holding back all evening. Not pretty tears, not cinematic tears, the kind that come from the chest and leave the whole body shaking. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "I didn't know he could do this. I didn't know." Mrs. Brooks held one of the babies and let Lena break. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus sat in his car with the engine off, forehead against the steering wheel, as the storm pounded the windshield like accusation. Darlene called again. This time he answered. "Well?" she asked. He said nothing. "Marcus?" "They're gone." A pause. "Good," she said. "You need clear space to think." Marcus lifted his head slowly. He looked at the apartment building in his rearview mirror. One upstairs window still glowed from the nursery lamp Lena had forgotten to switch off. For the first time, the reality of what he had done arrived without excuses. "They were standing in the rain," he said. Darlene exhaled impatiently. "And now they're not. Stop making yourself the victim in a decision you had to make." Had to. That word bothered him, because there had been 100 moments when he could have done something else. He could have asked for help, could have told Lena the truth about the bills weeks earlier, could have refused to let fear be coached into cruelty. Instead, he had chosen a version of manhood that confused control with strength. And still, he drove away. Back in Mrs. Brooks's living room, Lena's phone buzzed twice. Unknown number. She ignored it. Then it buzzed a third time. Mrs. Brooks glanced over. "Could be important." Lena hesitated, then answered in a whisper. "Hello?" A calm male voice came through. "Ms. Lena Price Carter?" "Yes." "My name is Jonathan Reeves. I'm an attorney with Price and Holloway Estate Services. We have been trying to reach you regarding your grandmother, Eleanor Price." Lena sat up straighter. "My grandmother?" "I'm very sorry for the hour. We were informed tonight that you may no longer be at your previous mailing address, and because there are urgent estate matters, I felt it was necessary to contact you directly." For a second, the room disappeared. Lena had to shift one twin higher against her chest just to keep breathing steadily. "I don't understand. My grandmother, she passed?" A pause, soft, respectful. "Yes, Ms. Carter. 4 months ago. I'm very sorry." Lena closed her eyes. Grief hits strangely when it arrives late. Not fresh, not ceremonial, but guilty. Like mourning something you should have reached for sooner. She whispered, "I didn't know." Mr. Reeves continued carefully. "There are documents naming you primary heir and executor of several holdings. We need to meet as soon as possible. Some assets have been in temporary management pending your contact." Mrs. Brooks came closer. "What is it?" Lena lowered the phone slightly, confused tears filling her eyes.
It's a lawyer. About my grandmother.
The attorney spoke again. Among the assets are a residential property, investment accounts, and controlling interest in Price Community Trust. There is one immediate matter I need you to know. Lena pressed the phone tighter. The building at 418 Hawthorne Row. Her breath stopped. That was the address. Their building. The place Marcus thought he had authority over. Mr. Reeves continued. It was transferred into your grandmother's estate years ago and is now legally under your inheritance structure. In simple terms, Miss Carter, he paused. The property belongs to you. Lena didn't speak. She couldn't. The babies breathed against her. The rain tapped the windows. And somewhere inside the same city, Marcus was still operating under the illusion that the night had ended with him in control.
Belongs to me?
Lena finally whispered. Yes, said Mr. Reeves. And that is only the beginning. Your grandmother established a trust, charitable partnerships, and long-term holdings intended for you. But the immediate issue is that you have legal standing over the residence. Tears slid down Lena's face again, but these were different. Still painful, still disorienting, but no longer empty. Mrs. Brooks knelt in front of her.
Lena?
Lena put the call on speaker. Mr. Reeves repeated the basics, slower this time. Residential property, estate transfer, legal heir, trust management. Meeting at 9 in the morning. When the call ended, the room fell quiet. Mrs. Brooks blinked once, then twice.
Well,
she said at last, with the measured seriousness of a woman trying not to enjoy justice too early.
That young man has made a historic mistake.
For the first time all night, a broken little laugh escaped Lena. Then she looked down at her sons. Their faces were calmer now, one asleep, one half awake, breathing in tiny bursts. And suddenly she understood something. This inheritance was not revenge. It was responsibility. It was shelter. It was choice. It was the chance to make sure her children would never feel the fear she felt on those steps. The next morning, Denise arrived before sunrise after seeing Lena's missed message. When she heard what happened, her face changed from concern to outrage, then to focused action. Within an hour, she had called a postpartum counselor, arranged transport, and insisted on accompanying Lena to the law office. Mrs. Brooks stayed with the twins while Lena changed into dry clothes. At the law office, the truth unfolded in pages. Eleanor Price had not simply left Lena money. She had built an entire safety net around her. Apartment buildings, educational grants, a small publishing company, investment portfolios, a foundation for single mothers and literacy programs, and Lena was her chosen successor. Not because she was the only blood relative, because Eleanor believed she had the one quality wealth could not buy: compassion. There is also a letter, Mr. Reeves said, sliding an envelope across the table. Lena recognized the handwriting instantly. Her fingers trembled opening it. My dear Lena, if this letter is in your hands, then I am gone, and life has once again asked you to be stronger than you planned to be. I know we lost years to silence. I carry my part in that. But I never stopped watching your heart from afar. I saw the way you gave when you had little. I saw how you turned ordinary rooms into places where people could breathe. That is why I chose you. Money is not power unless it becomes shelter. Property is not success unless it protects people. And inheritance is not a gift unless it gives the next generation more gentleness than the last one received. If ever you are made to feel small, remember this: your worth was never waiting for someone else to recognize it. Stand up, child. Then make room for others to stand with you. Love always, Grandmother Eleanor. By the time Lena finished reading, the tears on her cheeks were no longer tears of helplessness. They were tears of return. Mr. Reeves then explained the most immediate legal fact of all. Marcus had no authority to remove her from the residence. In fact, Lena could immediately re-enter the property with counsel present, and any claim Marcus made against the space would fail. Denise sat back in her chair and muttered, "He really chose the wrong woman to underestimate." Lena looked down at the letter again, then at her hands, then at the rain still streaking the office windows. Something quiet and powerful settled inside her. Not vengeance, decision. "I want to go home," she said. When Lena stepped back onto Hawthorne Row that afternoon, the storm had passed. The pavement was drying. The windows of the brick building reflected a pale, cleaner sky. She was not alone. Mr. Reeves had sent an associate. Denise walked on one side of her. Mrs. Brooks stood waiting at the curb, one twin in each arm, like a proud witness to restoration. And Lena no longer looked like the woman who had left in the rain. She still carried pain, yes, still moved carefully, still had questions about the future. But humiliation was gone. In its place was clarity. Marcus opened the apartment door before they could knock twice. At first, relief crossed his face, so immediate it told on him. He had expected her to come back fragile, grateful maybe, willing to negotiate the terms of her own dignity. Then he saw the attorney, saw Denise, saw Mrs. Brooks behind them, and his expression changed. "What is this?" Lena met his eyes calmly. "This is me coming home." Marcus frowned. "Lena, I was going to call." The attorney stepped forward. "Mr. Carter, I advise you to listen carefully. This property falls under the estate holdings of Ms. Lena Price Carter and is currently under legal transfer per the inheritance of Eleanor Price. Ms. Carter has full standing to reside here. You do not have the authority to exclude her." Marcus blinked. "What?" Lena said nothing. Not because she had no words, because silence was suddenly stronger. He laughed once, the confused laugh people make when truth feels impossible. "This apartment? No, I pay rent here." The attorney handed him a document. "Not anymore." Marcus scanned the page. His face drained of color line by line. "No," he said weakly. "No, this doesn't make sense." Denise adjusted one of the baby blankets. "Funny, that's what Lena felt in the rain." Marcus looked at her, then back at Lena. The babies made small, sleepy sounds in Mrs. Brooks's arms. The same babies he had abandoned to weather and fear. And for the first time since the night before, Marcus had nowhere to hide from what he had done. He took a shaky breath. "Lena, I didn't know." Now she spoke. Her voice was soft, steady. "That is exactly the problem, Marcus. You didn't know me. Not really. Not when I was kind to you. Not when I was building a home beside you. Not when I was bleeding, healing, carrying your sons, asking for help instead of pride.
You only knew how I looked when you thought I had less power than you. He lowered his head. I made a mistake. She nodded once. Yes, you did. Then she walked past him into the apartment. Not triumphantly, peacefully. She went first to the nursery. The lamp was still there. A diaper lay unfolded on the changing table.
A bottle sat where she had left it. The room looked as if motherhood had paused and was now waiting for her to continue. Lena stood in the doorway and breathed. She took her sons one at a time and laid them gently into their bassinets. Then she looked around the room and made a promise no one else heard. No one will ever make you feel unwanted in your own home again. Marcus remained in the living room, legal papers in hand, as consequences finally arranged themselves around him. He had not lost Lena because she suddenly became powerful. He had lost her when he chose convenience over character. The inheritance only made the lesson impossible to ignore. By evening, he had packed his bag again. This time, not as a man leaving responsibility, as a man being asked to leave the space he had poisoned. Lena did not scream, did not insult him, did not perform revenge for the neighbors. She only said, "You may speak to your sons through proper arrangements, but the version of this home where fear decides who belongs here is over." Marcus nodded slowly, tears finally visible. And then he walked out, carrying the same duffel bag he had held in the rain. Only now, it was no longer a symbol of control. It was proof that pride always travels lighter than love. Most people think the satisfying part of a story like this is the reversal, the reveal. The moment the man who underestimated the woman realizes she has more than he imagined. But that was not the real victory. The real victory came later, in the quiet decisions, the rebuilt mornings, the way Lena chose not to let pain define the architecture of her future. In the weeks that followed, Lena did what wounded people with uncommon hearts sometimes do. She turned survival into shelter for others. With the help of the trust team, she kept the building, but restructured several units under Eleanor Price's original mission. Safe transitional housing for mothers with infants, women leaving unstable situations, and families one crisis away from the street. The literacy center where Lena had once worked received expanded funding. A maternal wellness initiative was launched with Denise and local nurses. Mrs. Brooks joined the advisory board and claimed she only accepted the role to make sure no foolish man ever mistakes paperwork for authority again. For the first time in years, Lena felt aligned with something bigger than recovery. She was not simply healing from one man's failure, she was stepping into a legacy. Reporters eventually came. Local papers, community channels. A feature titled, "Young Mother Turns Inherited Property into Haven for Families in Crisis." They asked about the estate, the trust, the timing, the irony. And though many expected bitterness, Lena never gave them that. She told the truth without turning it into spectacle. "Yes, I was abandoned on a difficult night," she said in one interview. "But what matters most is not who left. It's what I decided to build after I was left." That line spread farther than anyone expected. Because grace, when spoken by someone who has earned the right to be angry, has unusual power. As for Marcus, consequences did not arrive as one dramatic collapse. They arrived as ordinary absence. He rented a small room across town, returned to work distracted, stopped answering his mother's calls as often. The same friends who had once admired his calm began hearing pieces of the story from neighbors, from whispers, from the visible fact that Lena was rebuilding while he was shrinking. One evening, he visited Darlene. She opened the door expecting agreement. Instead, she found exhaustion. "You were right about the bills," he said. "Wrong about everything else." She folded her arms. "Don't blame me for choices you made." Marcus let out a hollow laugh. "That's the first honest thing you've said in months." Darlene looked away, because even she knew there were some victories too ugly to keep defending. Marcus began requesting supervised visits with the twins. At first, Lena almost said no. Not from revenge, from protection. But then she looked at her sons sleeping side by side, tiny hands moving in dreams, and realized something. A child should never have to carry the full debt of a parent's worst night if change is truly possible. So she agreed, carefully, gradually, with structure and boundaries. Marcus came quietly. He held the boys awkwardly at first, like a man afraid touch itself might reject him. He cried more than once, not loudly, not dramatically, just in the helpless, private way regret leaks out when there is no point hiding it anymore. One afternoon, while rocking one twin near the nursery window, he said without looking up, "I don't expect forgiveness." Lena stood folding tiny blankets. "That's good," she replied, "because forgiveness is not the same thing as access." He nodded. After a moment, he asked, "Do you hate me?" Lena was silent for a long time. Then she answered with the kind of truth that takes maturity to survive. "No, I grieved you." Marcus closed his eyes, and somehow that hurt him more. Because hatred means the story is still hot. Grief means it is already cooled enough for burial. Still, Lena did not close the door on him completely. Not as a husband. That chapter had ended in the rain. But as a father? That would depend on who he became when no one was watching. And that, she decided, would be measured over time, not tears. Months later, on a bright autumn morning, Lena stood outside the same brick building where her life had once broken open. The steps were dry now. Fresh flowers lined the railings. A new plaque near the entrance read, "The Eleanor House for Mothers, Children, and New Beginnings." Residents moved in and out, carrying grocery bags, strollers, blankets, hope. Denise waved from inside. Mrs. Brooks sat near the window, correcting someone's volunteer schedule with delighted authority. The twins, bigger now, rested in a double stroller beside Lena, blinking up at a kinder sky. A local videographer asked her to stand where the rain scene had happened for one final interview segment. "Is this hard for you?" he asked gently. Lena looked at the steps, then at her sons, then at the building. "Yes," she said, "but not because I'm afraid of the memory." She smiled softly. "It's hard because I remember how certain I was that night that losing a home meant losing everything. I didn't know that sometimes life removes people who were blocking the door to who you're meant to become." The videographer lowered the camera for a second, visibly moved. "And what would you say to women who feel abandoned right now?" Lena took a breath, then gave the answer that would later be quoted everywhere, from church newsletters to women's support groups to community centers across the city. "I would say this: being left does not make you less valuable. Being underestimated does not make you less powerful. And being heartbroken does not mean your story is over. Sometimes the rain is not there to destroy you. Sometimes it's there to wash away the lie that you needed someone else's permission to stand." The twins made small sounds in the stroller
and Lena looked down, laughing softly. One of them reached up, fingers opening and closing toward the sunlight. Behind her, the building doors opened. Marcus stepped out after dropping off paperwork for an upcoming parenting session. He stopped when he saw the cameras, saw Lena, saw the plaque, saw the life built from the ruins of his worst decision. For a moment, their eyes met. No anger, no scene, just truth. He gave a small nod, part respect, part apology that words could never finish, and kept walking. Lena watched him go, then turned back toward the entrance, toward purpose, toward her children, toward the home that had become more than shelter. That was the irony no one could have written better than life itself.
The man who left her in the rain, thinking he was ending her security, had actually pushed her into the inheritance of her strength. And the woman who once sat on those steps, soaked, trembling, and abandoned, would become the reason hundreds of other mothers never had to. So if you ever wonder whether one cruel night can define a whole life, remember Lena. Remember the rain. Remember the twins. Remember the man with the duffel bag, who thought power belonged to whoever walked away first. And remember how wrong he was. Because real power is not in leaving before consequences arrive. It is in staying soft after pain, in protecting what is innocent, in rebuilding without becoming bitter, in turning private heartbreak into public refuge. That night, Lena sat outside with newborn twins and nothing but fear in her arms. Months later, she stood on the same ground with purpose, legacy, and a future no one could take from her. And maybe that is the deepest truth of all. The world may witness the moment someone abandons you, but heaven and time will witness what rises after. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. And tell me in the comments, what was the strongest moment in Lena's journey for you?